A man named Diego insults a fellow driver named Mario while on a road trip. After Diego stops his car, Mario smashes his windscreen, so he decides to kill him by hitting his car to fall down a river. However, Mario survives and makes it out before Diego leaves. One day, a lady named Isabel gets to the airport as she prepares to leave for her vacation. While arranging her luggage inside the plane, a man named Salgado offers to help. After the plane leaves the airport, Salgado asks Isabel if she's on the trip for work or pleasure. She says she'd like a bit of both, and he then asks what she does for a living. She says she's a model, and he compliments her looks. She then asks what he does for a living, and he says he's a music critic for classical music. Isabel says she used to have a boyfriend who was into classical music, though he never got published because none of the places he submitted his work to accepted him. Salgado asks for her ex-boyfriend's name, and she says Pasternak. Just then, Salgado remembers that he once interviewed her ex-boyfriend when he submitted his song to the Conservatory of Music while he was still on the jury. Isabel remembers this and says she was still with Pasternak when it happened. As she mentions that Salgado said pretty awful things to Pasternak, he says the song was that terrible. He also says that he sometimes has to be a bad guy to protect the ears of the public. Just then, a woman sitting in front of him mentions that she heard them talking about Pasternak. She says he was her student in elementary school and that he had issues. As she keeps complaining about him, a man named Ignacio recognizes her as his old teacher. The woman looks surprised, and Ignacio jokes about how he was wicked to Pasternak. Suddenly, a man from the back mentions that he's also the manager of where Pasternak used to work before he was fired. This leaves everyone surprised, and Salgado then asks for the people on the plane to signify if they know Pasternak. Everyone raises their hand, and they all realize that Pasternak has somehow gotten all of them to be on the same plane. The air hostess then suddenly mentions that Pasternak is the cabin chief for the flight, and that she once rejected his advances when he said he liked her. She also adds that the door to the pilot's cabin is now locked. As everyone gets scared, the plane starts experiencing some serious turbulence that makes them realize that Pasternak is trying to crash the plane. Just then, a man starts banging on the door for Pasternak to open the door. Ignacio asks who he is, and he says he was Pasternak's therapist. He mentions that Pasternak stopped coming to see him after he increased his fees. The therapist then bangs on the door and tells Pasternak that his parents are the ones to blame for how he turned out. He adds that Pasternak's parents asked too much of him and projected their disappointments on him. He also mentions that no one on the plane is responsible for how badly he must feel. However, Pasternak doesn't respond. While his parents are then sitting in their backyard, a plane crashes into them. Elsewhere, a man named Cuenca enters a restaurant and asks to be served by a lady named Moza. As Moza goes to the kitchen, she looks terrified and freezes for a minute. Her co-worker, Coquinera, asks what's wrong, and she says that Cuenca is a gangster from her hometown who made her father kill himself. She also mentions that after her father died, Cuenca tried to seduce her mom, and it was why they left the town. Coquinera then suggests killing him for what he did. She says they can put rat poison in his food, but Moza doesn't want this. As she then goes to take his order, he sounds quite rude as he tells her what he wants. When Moza returns to the kitchen, she tells Coquinera to start preparing the man's meal, but her co-worker shows her the rat poison. However, Moza puts it away and says she doesn't want to go to prison. After a while, Cuenca calls her to ask about her opinion on his campaign posters for the mayor position. She picks her favorite one, and as she returns to the kitchen, she laments about how a bad man like Cuenca will get to be mayor. Coquinera then mentions that it's even another reason to kill him. Moza says she doesn't want to do that, but Coquinera says prison is not too bad because there's free food and a free place to stay. Moza then asks if she has been in jail before, and she says she has. As her co-worker also asks what she did, Coquinera says it's something she doesn't regret. After a while, the food gets ready, so Moza serves Cuenca. However, she realizes that Coquinera still added the rat poison to his food. As she panics, Coquinera tells Moza not to worry about anything, because if the cops ask how he was poisoned, they'd lie that they sprayed rat poison around the kitchen before cooking his food. After a while, Cuenca's son, Alexis, arrives at the restaurant. Cuenca then calls Moza to his table. As she gets there, he asks her to get a drink for Alexis while they share his food. Moza tries to take the food away, but Cuenca sends her away to do what he wants. When she returns to the kitchen, she tells Cocinera that Alexis is also eating the food, but she doesn't care. She says there are chances that he'll be like his father, so it's a good thing. However, Moza looks terrified. As she then takes Alexis's drink to the table, she tries to take the food away, but Cuenca insults her and tells her to leave. Seeing as there's nothing else she can do, she throws the food on his face. He gets pissed, and just as he hurts her, Cocinera shows up behind him and repeatedly stabs him until he dies. Alexis watches this happen as he then starts to develop tummy issues. Shortly after, the police arrive at the scene to arrest Cocinera, while first aiders attend to Alexis and Moza. Elsewhere, a man named Diego is embarking on a long road trip. While driving, a man named Mario intentionally slows down Diego by driving slowly and stopping him from overtaking. Diego doesn't look happy about this, but as he finally gets the chance to overtake, he insults Mario and drives off. After a while, Diego's car has a flat tire, so he parks his car. He then brings out his spare tire and a jack, but as he doesn't want to get himself dirty, he calls a towing company to come over to help him take his car away. After a while, he eventually decides to do it himself, but as Mario gets closer, he leaves the tire unscrewed and enters his car. Mario then stops next to him, but Diego tells him to keep moving. Instead, he parks right in front of Diego's car. Mario seems to be angry at Diego's insults from their earlier encounter, so he now wants to fight. However, Diego doesn't want that, so he keeps telling Mario to leave. As Mario sees that Diego won't come out, he uses the car jack to smash the windscreen repeatedly. Diego then says it won't break because it's shatterproof. Suddenly, Mario decides to take a shit and urinate on Diego's car. Diego doesn't like this, but there's nothing he can do because he doesn't want to get beat up. After a while, Mario enters his car to leave, but before he can do so, Diego is so angry that he hits the car and pushes it to fall into a river. Finally, he then comes out to tighten the screws on the tire. However, before he can finish doing that, Mario appears to have survived the crash with some injuries, so he now wants to retaliate. Diego immediately enters the car and drives away before Mario can reach him. Suddenly, he then decides to turn back to kill Mario. As he speeds in the direction of Mario, he misses, so he decides to do it again. However, the loosened tire comes off, so he crashes near the river. He survives the crash, but as he's about to escape, he sees that Mario is trying to enter the car through the trunk. Mario eventually succeeds in entering the car, and the two men start fighting. Diego then sprays the fire extinguisher inside the car, but before he can escape, Mario ties his head to the seatbelt so that he'll die by hanging. As Mario then heads out, he opens the fuel tank and inserts a piece of cloth before setting it on fire. Before he leaves, though, Diego manages to free himself, so he drags Mario back into the car. As the two men then fight again, the car blows up and they both die. Back in the city, an engineer named Simon helps detonate some explosives to destroy a power plant. After he leaves work, he heads to a cake shop to get a cake for his daughter's birthday party. While he's inside the shop, he's unaware that a tow truck is towing his car away. By the time he leaves the shop, he's left shocked to see that his car is no longer outside. However, Simon sees that he has gotten a parking ticket. Almost immediately, he visits the transport authority to get his car. The attendant tells him that he has to pay some money, but Simon refuses to do so because he's sure he didn't park in the wrong place. He also insults the attendant, who says he's only doing his job. Simon is then asked to pay a towing fee to take his car, though the attendant says he'll still have to pay the parking fee at the main office. He reluctantly pays this money so he can take his car home. However, he gets stuck in traffic. While inside his car, he sends a message to his wife to inform her that he's still on his way. When she responds, though, she tells him not to worry because everyone is about to leave. Simon is not happy about this, but as he gets home, he sees his daughter blowing off the lights from a candle on a small cake. Later that night, his wife complains about how he never prioritizes his family. She mentions that he should have taken a taxi home after his car got towed, but he says he needed to prove to the authorities that he didn't park wrongly. Despite this, his wife says she's tired of their marriage. The next day, Simon heads to the place where he's supposed to pay the fee for his parking ticket. He complains again to the attendant about how his car was wrongly towed. He adds that he wants a refund for all the money he has spent since his car got towed. However, the attendant laughs because it's not possible. He also tells Simon that if his car got towed, then it's proof that he parked wrongly. Simon still doesn't agree with this, and as he gets angry, he smashes a fire extinguisher on the glass. This gets him arrested, but luckily he's bailed by his co-worker, who tells him that what he did has made his employers fire him because they also work for the government. Shortly after, his wife files for divorce and for the custody of their child. Her lawyer makes a strong case that Simon is violent and jobless, so this gets him angry, and he yells at his wife. This eventually gets him to lose the case, and he's not happy about it. Days later, he tries to get a job, but when he's rejected, he leaves angrily. On his way home, he then sees someone's parking ticket and comes up with an idea. He starts by paying his parking fee before loading his car with explosives and parking in the wrong place so that his car would be towed again. When this happens, he then detonates it and causes a huge explosion, but he's careful enough to avoid casualties. He gets arrested for this, but people on social media hail him because they feel people often get parking tickets even when they park well. A while later, his wife and daughter bring him a cake for his birthday in prison. As he then celebrates his birthday, his fellow inmates hail him with the name Dynamite. Elsewhere, a boy named Santiago arrives at home in the middle of the night and immediately goes to meet his parents while crying. It turns out that Santiago has hit a pregnant woman with his car. As the police investigation starts, the family lawyer believes it will only be a matter of time before the car is traced back to the house. Just then, Santiago's father, Mauricio, decides to get his groundskeeper, Casero, to help him. With the lawyer present, Mauricio begs Casero to take the blame for what happened, after which he'll receive $500,000. Casero realizes that it's a huge amount of money, so he agrees. The lawyer then tells Casero that he'll lie about not knowing he hit someone so that he'll get a reduced sentence and be released under 2 years. After a while, the pregnant woman is pronounced dead, and her father doesn't look happy about it. Meanwhile, the prosecutor eventually arrives at the house to hear Casero's story after he claims responsibility for the accident. However, after the prosecutor sees Casero inside the car, he says it's unlikely that the groundskeeper drove the car. As he then says that a tall person drove it, he asks if there are other people in the house. Seeing as Santiago could now be in trouble, the lawyer decides to speak to the prosecutor to strike a deal. After he does this, he tells Mauricio that the prosecutor wants $1 million as his payment for helping. Mauricio thinks it's too much, but the lawyer says the prosecutor will do a really good job. As Mauricio agrees, the lawyer also mentions that he'd like to receive $500,000 too. Even though Mauricio initially believes it's a crazy fee, he agrees to pay it. However, as the lawyer leaves to speak to the prosecutor, Casero shows up and says that since he's the one risking his life by going to jail, he deserves to get more money than anyone else. He then says he wants a beach house in addition to the money he'll be getting. Despite getting angry at this request, Mauricio has no choice but to accept. Later on, while the prosecutor talks about how they all need to get their stories straight, Santiago says he's willing to confess because he knows he did a bad thing. However, Casero tells him not to worry because he'll help him. After Santiago leaves, the prosecutor mentions that he'll need about $30,000 for some operational costs. This then seems to be the limit for Mauricio, who tells the prosecutor to remove it from his cut. As the prosecutor denies asking for $1 million, the lawyer interrupts and says he only calculated the extra costs attached. Suddenly, Mauricio says he's no longer interested in a deal. He then blames his son for doing a bad thing, which he now needs to face the consequences. His wife then begs him to let her make another deal, so he agrees. After a while, she returns with the lawyer who lays down the new terms, but Mauricio says he's only giving all parties $1 million to share. He also threatens to report them for extortion if they ask for more. Following this, the lawyer agrees and leads Casero out with the prosecutor. Before Casero can enter the cop car, though, the father of the pregnant lady shows up and hits his head with a hammer until he dies. Elsewhere, a lady named Romina and a man named Ariel get married in what is a big event. Everything seems to be going fine until Romina sees Ariel flirting with a lady named Lourdes. Because she has always suspected that her husband is cheating on her with someone who calls him frequently, she takes his phone and calls the number again. Surprisingly, it turns out that it belongs to Lourdes, because she's the only one who answers the phone. This breaks Romina's heart, and during a dance with Ariel, she accuses him of cheating. As she says she has confirmed it, he confesses and says he's sorry. However, Romina doesn't get why he invited Lourdes to their wedding, so she runs out of the hall, leaving all the guests confused. While she's then on the roof, a chef sees her crying, so he asks what happened. After she tells him, the man advises her not to allow her husband to ruin a day she's supposed to be happy about. As he sounds quite nice and encourages her to enjoy herself, she decides to cheat on her husband with him. Meanwhile, Ariel is still looking for where his new wife is. He eventually heads to the roof and sees her cheating. Before he complains, she tells him that she's going to keep cheating on him because of what he did. She mentions that he's now stuck with her because she also has a right to his properties in case they get divorced. Ariel looks shocked by this, but before he can say anything, she returns to the party. She then seems particularly excited as she dances and acts like nothing happened. Romina also calls Lourdes to dance with her. Lourdes looks shocked by this, but she still accepts. However, during their dance, Romina spins her around until she throws her against a glass wall, which shatters. As a result, Lourdes sustains a lot of injuries, but she's immediately attended to by some doctors. While Romina is still joking around, Ariel shows up and says he's calling off the wedding. He also says his lawyer has advised him to press charges after she mentioned that she'd take his properties. However, Romina says they can't just end the wedding. Ariel then breaks down in tears as he says she's hurting him more than he did to her, but Romina thinks he's only pretending. As Ariel's mom then attacks her, Romina's dad also comes to her aid. After a while, the doctors at the wedding finally get her to sit so that they can check her blood pressure. While doing this, Ariel suddenly stands up and picks up a knife to cut part of his wedding cake. After eating it, he goes to meet Romina to ask her to dance with him. She then accepts and takes his hands, after which she kisses him as she appears to have forgiven him.